There is a quality inside Japanese apartments that almost everyone notices immediately, and almost no one can explain. The room quiets you, not because it is silent, but because something about the space itself asks less of you than any other room you have been in. This feeling is not accidental. It is the result of design principles that Japanese culture has been refining for over 1,000 years. The first and most fundamental principle of Japanese spatial design has no direct equivalent in Western design philosophy. Ma is usually translated as negative space or emptiness, but neither translation captures what the concept actually means. Ma is not the absence of something. It is a presence in its own right, the pause between notes that gives music its meaning, the gap between objects that allows each one to be fully perceived. In a Japanese apartment, the empty corner is not waiting to be filled. It is doing something, creating breathing room, allowing the eye to rest, giving the mind space to slow down. This is why Japanese interiors feel calm even when they contain almost nothing. The emptiness is the design. Every cleared surface and open floor area is a deliberate act of generosity toward the person living in the space, an invitation to exist without visual demand. Western interior design has spent decades chasing perfection. Seamless surfaces, uniform finishes, objects that look as though they have never been touched. Japanese design philosophy takes the opposite position, and the difference in how the two approaches feel is profound. Wabi Sabi is the Japanese aesthetic of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. A hand-thrown ceramic bowl that is slightly uneven at the rim. A wooden floor worn smooth in the places where feet have passed for decades. A linen cushion that has lost its original crispness and holds instead the softness of long use. These imperfections are not flaws to be corrected. They are evidence of time, of use, of a life genuinely lived in the space. The reason wabi-sabi interiors feel restful is neurological as much as philosophical. The brain expends energy processing surfaces that demand perfection, looking for flaws, comparing against an ideal. Imperfect surfaces release that tension. They ask nothing of the viewer except to notice them as they are. Shizen, the Japanese concept of naturalness, is based on a belief that human beings cannot achieve genuine rest in spaces that are completely separated from the natural world. This is not a romantic notion. It is supported by decades of research in environmental psychology, showing that exposure to natural materials, natural light, and living plants measurably reduces cortisol levels and lowers heart rate within minutes of exposure. In Japanese apartments, nature is maintained as a constant presence rather than a seasonal decoration. A single branch of cherry blossom or pine in a simple ceramic vase, changed with the season. Natural materials, wood, stone, washi paper, clay, on every surface the hand might touch. A small indoor garden or a carefully tended bonsai that requires daily attention and, in return, provides daily connection to something living and growing. The specific plants and materials matter less than the principle that no room in a Japanese home is ever entirely without the presence of the natural world. Japanese interior design has a specific relationship with artificial light that is almost completely opposite to the Western approach. where Western rooms tend to be organized around a central overhead light source that illuminates the entire space uniformly. Japanese interiors treat overhead lighting as a last resort, something used only when necessary and avoided wherever possible. The reason is both aesthetic and psychological. Uniform overhead lighting flattens a room. It eliminates the shadows and gradients that give surfaces depth and texture, and it creates a quality of brightness that the brain associates with functional spaces like offices and shops rather than with rest and recovery. Japanese lighting instead comes from multiple low sources: floor lamps, table lamps, paper lanterns, the warm glow of a single candle, each creating its own small world of warmth within the larger calm of the room. The result is a space that feels fundamentally different at night than it does during the day, and that supports rest in the evening rather than working against it. One of the most consistent findings in environmental psychology research is that natural materials produce measurably different neurological responses than synthetic ones. Wood, stone, clay, paper, and natural fiber textiles trigger what researchers call soft fascination, a gentle, effortless engagement that rests the brain rather than stimulating it. Synthetic surfaces, plastic, laminate, synthetic fabric, produce no such response. Japanese interior design is built almost entirely on natural materials, and this is not aesthetic preference. It is the recognition that a home furnished with materials the brain recognizes as alive, as having come from the natural world, produces a fundamentally different quality of rest than one furnished with materials the brain reads as manufactured. In a Japanese apartment, every surface the hand might touch is natural. Tatami mat underfoot, washi paper filtering light through shoji screens, unfinished wood on the shelf, hand-thrown clay in the bowl. The cumulative effect of these material choices is a room that the body, not just the eye, recognizes as a place to rest. The Japanese approach to storage is based on a principle that Western design has only recently begun to understand: that the visual presence of objects in a living space, even objects that are useful and attractive, creates a low-level cognitive demand that accumulates over time and prevents genuine rest. In Japanese homes, the solution is concealment. Sliding fusuma doors conceal entire rooms of storage behind flush surfaces that, when closed, read as walls rather than as storage. Built-in tansei chests with minimal hardware disappear into the architecture. Objects not in immediate use are put entirely away, not displayed on open shelving or left on surfaces, but removed from the visual field of the living space entirely. The result is rooms that feel, to the Western eye, almost impossibly empty, but to the Japanese sensibility, and to the brain's natural preference for low visual demand, they feel exactly right: calm, undemanding, and completely prepared for rest. Japanese interior color is built around a palette so restrained that it initially appears to have no color at all, and then, as the eye adjusts, reveals itself to contain more subtle variation than almost any other design tradition. The base is always a warm neutral: the cream of washi paper, the pale gray of aged wood, the warm beige of tatami straw. Against this base, accent colors appear with the deliberateness of a single brushstroke, the deep indigo of a folded textile, the rust of an unglazed ceramic, the particular green-gray of a moss-covered stone. Each accent is singular, one color, one object, given the space of the entire neutral room to be fully perceived. The psychological effect of this palette is a room that the brain reads as complete rather than incomplete, a space where nothing is missing and nothing is competing, and where the eye can rest rather than search. Three architectural elements define the traditional Japanese home more than any others, and each one can be introduced into a modern apartment in ways that carry the full weight of their cultural meaning without requiring structural renovation. Tatami, the woven rush mat that defines the Japanese floor, can be introduced as a single mat in a sleeping or meditation area, immediately grounding that corner in a sensory and cultural tradition that has remained unchanged for over 400 years. Shoji, the translucent paper screen that filters and softens light, can be approximated with sheer washi paper panels or rice paper lampshades that bring the same quality of diffused, gentle illumination. And Ingawa, the transitional space between inside and outside, traditionally a wooden veranda, can be referenced through a window seat or a low platform at the threshold of a balcony door, creating the same psychological experience of a space that belongs to both worlds simultaneously. The Japanese approach to the bedroom is perhaps the most radical departure from Western domestic convention, and the one that most directly explains why Japanese homes feel so restorative. The traditional Japanese bedroom contains almost nothing. A futon laid directly on tatami, rolled and stored during the day, so the room serves multiple purposes. A single low lamp, perhaps one object of personal meaning on a small shelf. Nothing else. The room communicates its purpose, rest, without any ambiguity, and the brain responds to that clarity with an immediate shift in state. In a modern apartment, this philosophy does not require sleeping on the floor. It requires instead a bed as low as possible, a room as clear as possible, lighting as warm and dim as possible, and the discipline to keep the bedroom a room for rest rather than a room where every other activity of domestic life also happens. The Japanese bedroom works because it is given one job and allowed to do it completely. The Japanese apartment feels calm because every decision made in it, about space, material, light, storage, color, and object, is made in service of the same goal, reducing the cognitive and sensory demand on the person living there, so that the home genuinely restores rather than merely shelters. You do not need to empty your apartment and start again. You need to begin making decisions with this goal in mind, removing one object from each surface, replacing one synthetic material with a natural one, moving one lamp from the ceiling to the floor, concealing one category of storage behind a closed door, introducing one branch of something living into one room. Each of these changes is small, The cumulative effect of making all of them is a home that feels fundamentally different, that quiets you when you walk in, rather than asking more of you than the day already has. Japanese apartments feel calm because they are designed to. Every decision, the empty corner, the imperfect ceramic, the branch in the vase, the lamp on the floor, is made in service of one goal, a home that restores you rather than demands from you. Wabi, Sabi, Shizen, these are not aesthetic choices. They are answers to a question most homes never ask. What does the person living here actually need? Subscribe for a new interior video every week. And tell me in the comments, which principle are you bringing into your home first?